And welcome to the Midday Show. I am Jeff Everett. He is Mark Messina. Wednesday's news, hump day headlines. I want to tell you what I learned about the FTX fallout. I actually think you'll really enjoy it. There's some dynamics. There's some like good guy, bad guy, villain stuff. Really, really good. I think you're going to enjoy it. And I have not told you about this.
Everybody likes the good guy, bad guy, villain stuff.
Yes. Trump made his bid. We'll mention that as well, along with some other headlines. Mark, how are you feeling today?
Jeff is not sick at all. He is faking it.
I asked how you were feeling, not how I was feeling.
Well, before we, up until 5 minutes ago, you're running around the office, jumping jacks like Richard Simmons. And now all of a sudden we're ready to get on the air. You put on a sweatshirt, you pull down a hat, pretend that you're under the weather.
Can I ask you a question as a millennial? Like, why Richard Simmons? What made him? How did Richard Simmons become?
That's a good question.
Thing?
I don't know, but he was it. I guess back then there was Jack LaLanne was somebody.
Okay.
Jack LaLanne was a little before my time, and I thought, did he own clubs? I don't know. But Richard Simmons, I think just because his persona was so, you could tell it was genuine, but it was so almost cartoonish.
If I tell you a story, you promise not to make fun of me.
Well, and hold on. And then he came out, like he was the first guy on TV that was like, get up and exercise. Nobody did that. Jane Fonda at some point, but like Richard Simmons was it. And then he did this sweating to the oldies. And he made these videos, like workout videos, but and he picked good. And that was kind of what kept him. So he had his moment, but then he kind of extended his moment, kind of like Snoop Dogg. Snoop Dogg went from being like one of the world's greatest rappers. Now he's doing commercials. He's kind of branched off, and so sweating to the oldies and then it became this joke, and it just rolled off your tongue. It's like, oh, sweating to the oldies. So yeah, but it is a good question how he got started.
I had to be younger than 10 years old. The first time I ever saw a Richard Simmons like on TV, like the first time I'd ever seen him. I'm not kidding you. And I don't know why I had this thought. I thought it was a Billy Crystal like gimmick or like movie.
Oh, okay.
Like I thought, like I saw it on the TV for like 60 seconds and I was like, that is the weirdest Billy Crystal movie I've ever seen. And then just kind of like kept moving on with my like young 9-year-old, 10-year-old life. So the first time I ever saw Richard Simmons, I thought it was Billy Crystal just doing like a skit. Like I thought it was him just being.
I thought you were going to say one of your, 74 relationships that the first date you went on with a chick, she was watching a Richard Simmons video and you had to do the workout with her. That's what I thought you were going to say.
Why would that be a thing? Where did that even? Why?
Well, I couldn't understand why you had a Richard Simmons story.
I
don't have a Richard Simmons story.
I thought it was Billy Crystal in a wig. Like the first time I ever saw him, I thought it was like a bad SNL skit. The first thing
I totally get it now, and I'm with you. You said I have a Richard Simmons story, and I'm thinking, why would you have a Richard Simmons story? So in my mind, I'm trying to think of, and you're like, I had this girlfriend who loved Richard Simmons, and she used to worry on me. That's where I thought you were going.
Did you ever do a Richard Simmons workout?
Never.
Not once.
Never.
Interesting. A couple of things. There's headlines all across the news. Trump made his bid. FTX fallout. Do you have anything that you want to start with before I get it?
No, you go. You go. I'm ready to play off your lead.
Listen to this. Met Richard Simmons at Hershey Hotel. Awesome guy. Great dad jokes. There you go. And then Heather says, Simmons got to start by owning a gym in Beverly Hills that catered to overweight individuals. There you go. That's how he got it going. Thank you, Heather.
Huh.
He is unique. He's hard. It's a little This is a super bad example, but you know how like no one, in my opinion, no one will ever look or sound or do what Bob Ross did, like the painter.
Correct.
To me, Richard Simmons is like no one will ever look, sound, and do what Richard Simmons was able to do.
I think, like I said, there's an authenticity to him that was comic bookish.
Yeah.
But it didn't, when he was doing his shtick, it did not seem like it was an act.
No, it worked. I'm with
Maybe it wasn't an act at all.
Yeah. Listen, I love the fact that I got to have a Richard Simmons conversation today. It was not something I was prepared to do.
Your day's already brighter.
Thank you for watching the Midday Show. I wanted to talk to you about the FTX thing. How much have you had a chance? I flirted with bringing it up on the show a couple of times. Then like something new would happen and I'd be like, I better read about it first before I dive into it. I feel caught up is a bad word because it just keeps moving forward. I feel caught up enough that like I feel like I could talk to you about some of the stuff.
Essentially everything I know I've heard from you.
Okay. So just for anybody who hasn't read about it, dove into it, FTX, cryptocurrency exchange, basically it was started. It was a separate company originally. It was like a hedge fund. A guy from MIT in his 20s took it over. Then he decided to take one of the platforms from it and turn it into a cryptocurrency exchange, essentially. And he called this FTX. It was very, very successful. The real reason it was successful is because at the time, and you and I had these conversations last year, it was just very complicated to buy cryptocurrency.
Yes.
I remember a couple of times like we were talking about this one or that one, and you had talked about possibly getting into it. It was just very, very challenging to do it. And so this kid from MIT, I feel bad calling him a kid, but this kid from MIT basically took over this hedge fund platform, decided to make it easier to basically swap out coins, or so everybody thought. Essentially, what they ended up finding out is a lot of this, you weren't actually buying the crypto, you were essentially buying an IOU for the crypto. So essentially, if I gave FTX $5 for X, and then when I wanted to cash out, X was 25, I never actually had X. They would just write it out as if I had X. That's what they ended up finding out a lot of this was. And that's only like one small piece of it. So this guy's name, Sam Bankman-Fried. He is called SBF. So if you hear me say SBF, that is the guy who basically ran FTX. You with me so far?
I'm with you.
I knew you would be. So SBF basically ended up getting into some trouble. There is an arch nemesis, and this guy goes by CZ. Yes. This guy goes by CZ. Okay, so we got SBF, and we have.
Do we need
CZ.
a whiteboard?
No, this will be as complicated as it gets. Essentially, what happened? CZ was an original investor in FTX. He runs Binance, which you might have heard of Binance by now. It's one of the bigger ones. So the guy who started Binance put money into this FTX. Once FTX started doing well, they decided they no longer wanted CZ, Binance, to be a part of this anymore. And so not only did they buy him out, like eventually it said, like, we no longer need you. We don't want you to be a part of this. Not only did they buy him out, they bought him out using their own crypto. So they didn't buy him out like cash. They didn't buy him out credit or anything like that. They basically gave it to him using their own token, which in a way is basically like the double birds. It's essentially saying like, not only do we not want you to be a part of this, but when we buy you out, we're going to buy you out in our token. So now you have to be on our platform.
We're firing you from our restaurant,
yes,
but we're going to pay you in coupons for free pizzas.
This is the best way I could explain it to somebody. It would be, because I heard this analogy and it's perfect. It's like if you worked at Chuck E. Cheese and when they fired you, they gave your severance in
tokens,
in Chuck E. Cheese tokens.
Right.
It's essentially what happened. So that happens. Move down further down the road. As FTX grows and grows and grows, this CZ, this Binance realizes, well, I have all these tokens from the buyout. And he goes, I bet you they're worth something now. So he essentially decides he wants to cash in his tokens. And it was a lot of tokens because he was one of the original investors. So when he goes to do this, essentially what happens is they reach out to him. They say, hey, do you really want to do this? Is there a way we can? And he decides there's something not right. Like clearly there's something wrong. So he goes online, he posts basically saying that he's pulling all of this stuff from FTX. He doesn't think that they're in good graces essentially financially. So he goes to pull it. And then when he goes to pull it, the bottom basically comes out. Other people start pulling their funds from FTX and they realize that they do not have even close to the amount of money that you would need to actually cover people pulling out. Now, here's what's weird. This isn't like crazy uncommon. Banks have done this several times. I mean, there's a lot of times that a run on the bank, and they can't get the money out, and they don't have.
It's a wonderful life.
Yes. So that aspect of it, actually, there's a lot of different conversations around this. One of the things that's why I still kind of feel okay about crypto is because it really did act like a bank. Like, there was no difference between a crypto falling apart and a bank falling apart. It was basically the same.
But banks are now FDIC insured.
Correct, which is one of the things that I think as we move forward, they're already calling for regulation. I mean, it's coming whether people want it to or not.
This is one of the things that's going to help the government, who doesn't want crypto.
Correct.
And who's like, well, hey, you could lose everything and no one's here to protect you.
Yes. So CZ pulls out. Essentially, when the SBF, so the guy running FTX, he's making phone calls. Like, he's calling the Tom Brady's of the world. He's calling the hedge funds of the world, all these different places. I believe his asking price on the phone from different stories that I read is he was calling around asking people for $1 billion investment.
That's it?
That's it. Because that's how much it was going to take to actually keep this alive and going and to move forward.
Why didn't he call us? We have $1 billion laying around.
I don't know if our Emmys are worth that much. I don't know if they're worth it. So that's
I just got lunch with a pizza coupon.
That works.
But
was it your Montoursville
mock trial?
Mock trial. I have one. I got to use by December 1st. So that's one aspect of this whole thing and how it fell apart. It's really somebody who was a part of it, felt a little bit like he scammed is too strong of a word, but essentially felt cheated out and basically decided to try to pull the rug out when he saw an opportunity to do so. The other side of this, and I don't know if you know this side of it or not, and it's being discussed online. So please do your own research if you're interested in it. It's a fascinating story. It's a fascinating plot if you're interested in it. SBF, so Sam Bankman-Fried, was the second highest donator to the Democratic Party going into the midterms. Okay. Which a lot of people don't know that. And I pulled this up just to be sure. He donated $38 million during the midterm cycle, according to the Federal Election Commission data. It's the second most money donated, second only to George Soros. Okay. Here's the circle, and then different news outlets are piecing this together. So no one news outlet has the full story, has like here's what happened. But if you take this story from CNN and you take this story from Fox, you take this story from Reuters, it all starts to kind of come together.
Which is what you're about to do, which is why we're almost Emmy nominated.
Thank you. I appreciate it. That might have been the nicest thing you've ever said to me.
That's not true.
So here,
I see nice things all the time.
It's close. So here's what's going to happen. When Ukraine first started being attacked by Russia, FTX and SBF created a fund, and I have it pulled up here. They created a cryptocurrency. So basically what it's called, the initiative was powered by the Ministry of Digital Transformation of Ukraine. Okay. FTX and the Ukrainian web company Everstake are who set it up. The aid was for Ukraine to raise funds for Ukrainians amid the ongoing war against Russia. Okay. So they set up that fund. They worked with the Ukrainian Ministry of Finance, and they also worked with Ukraine to support crypto donations so Ukraine could figure out how to basically exchange it and make it work for them, right? Because I can give Ukraine a Bitcoin, but if they don't have a way to exchange it, if they don't have a way to actually turn it into something, it doesn't. Right. It's not going to do you any good. Okay.
It would be like if I loaned you a DVD and you don't have a DVD player.
That's exactly what it's like. That was almost too spot on, to be exact.
I'm just here to help.
So here's what ended up happening. Americans ended up funding Ukraine. People gave to this fund through FTX. FTX then took certain percentages off of that. They took money from that and basically ended up being the second biggest donator to the midterms. And so there's a whole other, you can keep tying it all together. Again, there's multiple reports. No one has actually linked it all together, because if you're on the right side, there's certain parts of the story you don't love. If you're on the left side, there's certain parts of the story you don't love. So no one is tying the full circle together. But essentially what happened is that the money went to FTX, which went to Ukraine, and then Ukraine put the money back into FTX, which was then donated for midterm elections.
Okay.
So if you kind of start to link it together, essentially what happened is that taxpayer money went into FTX, which was then donated to the Ministry of Ukraine, which was then put back into FTX so that they could exchange it, and then went back and was given $38 million into midterm elections. Now, did every single cent follow that line? No.
You know who's not happy about that?
Who's not happy about that?
Tom Brady.
Tom Brady's not happy about it at all. Any investor in FTX is pretty furious about it right
now. Well, in general, they've lost their money, but Brady's a Republican.
Yes. There's a lot of so if you follow that line again, not every penny, not every cent, but very clearly money from taxpayers went into FTX, and money from FTX went back into midterm elections that they may or may not support. And those people who put money into FTX can no longer get it out. As of right now, they are not getting that money. They filed bankruptcy. I don't know if you saw this or not. They filed bankruptcy Monday, I think it was.
Here's a thought.
Go ahead.
And not to distract from you, because that was very well done.
Thank you.
Is there any chance it seems people are equating, because I just thought this out loud when I said that Tom's a Republican. I don't know what Giselle's political bent is, but she is female. And people are equating it to when Tom went back to play football. Do you think it had to do anything with the Supreme Court and Roe v. Wade? And Giselle was like, this is crap. And Tom said, it's not crap. And maybe that was it.
And that might have been. How many houses do you think really struggled with the Roe v. Wade debate?
It would be fascinating. Schwarzenegger was married to a Kennedy-ish.
Yep.
And he was a Republican governor of California, and she was obviously a Democrat.
Right.
My father-in-law, ex-father-in-law, the way we've talked about this, his second wife is a staunch Democrat. Okay. He is a staunch Republican. He was a lifetime military guy. Those would be very interesting households. Yeah, it would be. I mean, I know the one that I heard from my father, they're like, we just really don't talk about it.
Yeah.
Because we can't talk about it.
There was remember I told you about the show Love is Blind? Do you remember this? Where they date everything else. So on the
hold on. Is it you got to talk to the person, but you had to propose before you saw them?
Well, yes. So the idea is you have to get down and propose to them before you get a chance to see them. Then there's like a 4-week thing before the actual wedding. But yes.
But you meet them and talk to them and all that stuff and have no idea what they look like.
Correct.
Okay.
So on the last season, there was a conversation that went viral on the show. And the conversation was the couple talking about abortion before they got married. And so half the country on social media was kind of like, oh my gosh, can you believe so-and-so thought this? Can you believe the other person thought that? But the other half of the country was kind of like, good for them. You're about to get married.
Right.
That's not an awful conversation to have with somebody before you decide if you're going to marry them or not. And so you brought up a good point. And now when I think about that show and that whole thing happening on social media, I do wonder how many households had never had the conversation until this past summer. And if it really, I'm not implying like the divorce rate went up, but I can imagine there were a lot of loud and then quiet nights in households across America this summer because they had never had the conversation before.
And agreed. And to take it one step further, one of the great modern phrases, other than it is what it is we'll have to agree to disagree. And I'm sure that you've met people in your life that can't.
Sure.
They cannot let it go.
Sure.
Like, I don't see it your way, and they just keep pounding.
Especially, with abortion too, I think it comes down to, I think you have people that are willing to be like pro-choice or anti-choice, but then I think for some people, the word is not choice, it's life. And so I think if you're having the abortion argument and that second word is life, then you probably have a harder time accepting what the other person's opinion is. I'm guessing. That is interesting. Because the stakes would be higher, right? I mean, if you
again, do I think this is why Tom and Giselle broke up? No, but I just thought it was
wonder, I mean, knowing now, I mean, again, reports came out, $600 to $650 million possibly of their estate into FTX.
How much this?
I mean, knowing what we know now, I mean, did they know, like, did they kind of see this coming ahead of time and it was enough to make them, you know, to drive it? Like, if you're Brady and you're saying to Giselle, like, hey, we're putting everything in this, or if you're Giselle and you're saying to Tom, like, we're putting everything,
right,
and then all
because
of a sudden,
someone in every relationship, someone's more gung-ho about it than the other in every aspect of your life.
Sure. Let's put it this, Brady's playing a little bit better ever since he's 600 million. I don't want to say in the hole, but 600 million possibly down the drain. He's playing a lot better.
I wonder what he's got left.
So the one
there's no way they have all of their money.
So I said
there's no way.
I would never say Tom Brady is broke because on a day-to-day basis, he's bringing in X.
There's no way he took everything in his account.
I'm not saying he put everything in his account. Let me ask you this.
Kurt Schilling did, and no one's going to do it again.
Do you think Tom Brady was a billionaire?
No.
Okay, so if the reports are correct from multiple sources that it was 600 to 650 million, and you and I agree he probably wasn't a billionaire.
Is that what it was worth, or is that what
that's
he put
what
in?
they put in? According to reports, they put in 600 to 650 million. So that's what I'm saying to you is like, if you don't think he's a billionaire, and you and I fall on the number like he had 750 million. I mean, I'd always heard argument that was 90% of his.
I'd heard reports that she was worth more than he was.
That's possible, but see this keeps saying that this was them.
Correct.
Okay.
But so say.
Oh, I see what.
Say she's worth 750 million and he's worth 500 million.
I see what you're
saying. They split it. They're still okay.
Yeah. There is great videos going around right now so Tom Brady went to the Bahamas. I believe it was this summer because that's where all this stuff is based out of. A lot of people don't realize that either.
Oh, okay.
Like when you would put into FTX, it was offshore.
It was what's the island? They did it in the firm. Where do they take all the money?
Oh, I can't remember. I know what you're talking about. I can't remember.
They either send it to Switzerland or they send it to.
I can't remember. I know what you're talking about.
You can tell. That's how much we deal with international banks and hiding money off. It's So
they're in the Bahamas. So essentially
the Cayman Islands.
Cayman Islands. So they're in the Bahamas. Tom Brady has videos on social media and he's like with SBF. He's with this Bankman-Fried. And he's like doing videos with them, like promoting like this. I think it was like an FTX conference or something. And so like they're now being reposted to basically show like.
Are you sure that wasn't at the Fire Festival?
I'm sure it might as well have been the Fire. They would have lost less money if it was the Fire Festival. The other interesting one too is all the sponsorships he did. So like Miami now is looking for someone to name their arena because it was the FTX arena. They've gotten rid of that. So just a lot of fallout, a lot of, and it's not even close to being done. I told you, he gave a ton of money to some research center that a girl was working at.
You said that, you said the teachers union in Canada.
That one's interesting. I mean, there's a lot of, the main story is obviously interesting. I mean, there's going to be side stories about this that are just going to be really devastating and just really interesting.
It is kind of a modern Adelphi because we talked about that. Yes. What was the Enron? Was that the energy Enron? Company?
Yeah, and Lehman Brothers.
Lehman,
there's
yes,
a bunch, yeah.
Yes. There's been a few, and this is our modern for this cycle through. This is the one.
So this will be the last thing, and then we'll get off of it because I know this isn't like your favorite cup of tea. I can't help, like everyone's like, oh, like the death of crypto, like, oh, like told, like I knew you never should have got into it, like that. I don't know. I feel like this happens to a bank every 5 years. Like to me, this happens all the time.
I think though it's certainly not the death of crypto, but it has slowed down the meteoric rise. I was waiting for the crypto thing to go like the internet did. And you're probably too young to remember when stamps.com was trading at $100 a share. And I just make this up. I don't know if that's true. But I'm like, why do you have to order stamps online? Can't you just still go to, like, why is it worth that much? Like, it's not that. And there are pets online and candy online and all these things that, and then they just, obviously some of them thrived and the other ones came crashing. And it's going to be the same way with crypto. And with each thing like this, smart people are going to step back. people they're going to try to find people smarter than us. I don't know if they can, but they're going to try.
Sure.
And they're going to make regulations, and they're going to look at all these things and say, wow, we can't do this. That's the reason the stock market crash of 29 is why things are FDIC insured, because they don't want runs on the bank. And they're like, well, how do we prevent that from happening? So yes, this is not the death. There is no death of crypto. This was a injury and a reassessment, and they'll figure it out, and this just won't happen again, really, kind of, mostly.
That's interesting.
Not in this way.
No, I hadn't thought of it until like that was the first 3-second thought of like, could it happen again? And I hadn't thought of that.
And it'll happen differently. Okay. There'll be another, like the housing market crash, because they were taking, because what the stock market in the crash, they were everything was buying everything on the margin, on the credit. Right. And then when they called it in, there was no money.
Right.
And that was the same thing that happened in the housing market 70 years later. Nobody was putting any money down. And then the value of the house was dropping, and then everybody was underwater.
Well, what's interesting about this is I think the reason this got as far as it did is because before he changed this platform over to a cryptocurrency exchange, he had, I believe it's called Alameda, which is a hedge fund. Like it's like they are. And so part of the reason that this was viewed, like if you're Tom Brady and all these other people, part of the reason you did this is because it was based off of this person was doing it. This wasn't a crypto person per se. This was somebody who was like taking over a hedge fund, like somebody who was in banking. And so it's just the irony to me of like, that's crypto, like you can't trust it. And I'm thinking to myself, like, it took somebody who had a hedge fund, right, to try to do a crypto exchange to kind of ruin crypto for everybody.
Right.
And so I'm not saying that everybody in crypto is like this innocent person, right? Like I'm not saying the heads of like Binance and these other platforms are great, but what I'm saying is the irony for me is it took a banking person, it took someone who had a hedge fund to come in and basically manipulate it and use it for something it wasn't. And to me, that's more damning about banking than it is about crypto.
No, I get it.
Because that's essentially what allowed him to leverage to be able to do this, was he was able to kind of manipulate the money back and forth between the exchange and his hedge fund, and no one really questioned it for 2-3 years.
Right.
No, so I don't know. So that the whole thing's just kind of ironic to me. Trump's bid. Did you have anything? We've talked a lot about Trump lately, but I thought it was worth mentioning just because
I think the fascinating thing is now, just from an American history standpoint, that for the last however many years, well, you look at when Obama went in 2008. So since 2008, the Republicans have been screaming at the Democrats. And it was, Obama for 8 years, and then it was Hillary. And then when Trump got in, he kept screaming at the Democrats. Mm-hmm. And then Trump lost to Biden, and everyone kept yelling at the Democrats. So it has been a long, long time since there has been a backyard fight between two brothers. Mm-hmm. And that's what the Republicans are looking at for the next 2 years. Mm-hmm. And it is going to be ugly.
Interesting. I wonder if there will come a point. I would just imagine that they're not going to let it go for 2 years. And when I say they, I know that's very vague. I just find it hard to believe that a faction of the Republican Party won't be able to kind of like tip the scale and say, and which one that is, I don't know. Like if that ends up being the Trump, if that ends up being DeSantis' side, like which side ends up tipping it over. But I would imagine like a lot of Republicans, 3 months, 6 months in, 8 months in, they're going to have to look at each other and kind of be like, all right, we're moving over here because like the scale's tipping that way and we can't do this for 2 years.
I agree with that. But then let's look at this. Is Trump going away? If they sat down with him and said, we really, really need you to back out, who's he listening to?
Well, that I agree with. I think the question, though, has become like, it's the difference between being at the head of the circus or being outside the tents. Because you can be loud outside of the tents, right? Like you can holler and scream outside of the circus tent all you want. It's like, are you going to let him stand in the center of the ring? And so I think whether it's DeSantis or Trump, I don't know. I just know that I truly believe that after a while, Republicans are going to say, okay, we can't do this anymore. If you don't want to give up, if you want to scream and yell, that's fine. But you're going to do it outside of the tent, and we're just going to have to live with it. That's what I think is going to happen.
And I get that.
Mm-hmm.
But if you throw Trump outside the tent, he's going to light it on fire.
You think so?
I mean, his history.
I think he'll try.
Even the people in his party that have, come out against him, and, generals. And when you go back through, there's a lot of people that were Republicans that called him out on something.
Sure.
And he immediately was like, well, I used to respect him and now I don't. And
I wonder if
he will, if the Republican Party asks him to go away, don't you think he will turn on the Republican Party immediately?
I think the question, and it'll be interesting to see if Trump believes this or not, is that if you burn down the tent, is there another tent for you? And so I think right now, what a lot of people don't realize is they go, well, 40% of the party is Trump, and I get it, but there is no other tent for him.
In politics?
Yes.
Well, he doesn't care.
Right, but if you want to be president, you have to.
Well, he was president, and he's almost, and there has to be an aspect of.
So just to clarify, you don't buy the idea. Like, to you, he can burn down that tent and he'll still have a chance to do what he wants to do.
No.
Okay. So
but I think
so. The question is, does he know that or not? That's the question.
Okay. It's like when you're dating someone and you keep playing nice so you can hopefully keep dating them and so you can keep sleeping with them and all these things. And then when the person drops it and says, no, I'm not dating you.
I have no idea what you're talking
I'm not dating you. I'm not sleeping with you anymore. Now there's no more reason to play nice.
That analogy went straight over my head.
So if he burns down their and he has nowhere else to go, right. Well, where else is he going to go? The Democrats aren't picking him up.
That's what I'm saying.
If he wants to start a party, but if they've told him you can't sleep with us anymore, then why is he going to be nice to hope that they change their mind?
I don't know if it's about changing their mind. It's just the idea of is he still convinced he could win them back? Like, maybe not for 2024, maybe for 20. Like my thing, it's kind of like this idea. There's a reason.
He'll be 82 years old.
Here's what I'm saying though. I think you and I would agree that if he could do it without the Republican Party, he already would have.
Correct.
Okay. And so the fact that he hasn't tells me that he understands he can't.
But he's
so when you say, like, do I think he wants to burn down the tent? Absolutely. Like, if they say to him, like, this is where we're going, you have to stand outside. Do I think he would 100% look at the people around and be like, we're burning this to the ground? Absolutely. But I do think in the back of his head, he knows, I got to figure out how to get back inside the tent.
To make a really bad pun, I disagree. This is the Republican Party. If this is what happens, because right now he's still leading in the polls.
Sure.
He is the Republican front runner. If you look at the polls, if the Republican Party looks at Trump, and to make a really bad pun, says you're fired, and you're not, he's not walking away. Just like anybody else in any business, you tell someone they're fired, they grab their stuff, they MF everybody on the way out. Correct. They're flipping desks. They're doing all that. They don't walk out and say, well, I'm going to take this firing politely in case these people change their mind.
We're having two different conversations, because my point is not him taking it politely. My point is that he understands the only way for him to win is to get back inside. That's the only way. There is to burn it down is essentially saying, I will no longer have a chance to ever run for president.
What do you think?
That's
Trump,
what I'm saying.
After seeing Trump as much as we have for the last couple of years, do you think he's a calmly walk away and hope that I can get back in the good graces of the party, or burn it down?
We're having two different conversations. We're having two different conversations. Not. Yeah, we are.
On the way out, there's only one pitch in his arsenal. It is burn it down.
I disagree, because I think he knows he needs to be inside the tent.
But they've told him you're not in the tent anymore.
I understand that, but he still knows that's the tent.
Okay, I'll give you this analogy. You're a high school kid, and there's an underage party, and you want to go to the party because the party's where all the cool kids are at, where all the hot girls are at, and the people inside the party say, we don't want you here, and we throw you out. You have two choices.
By the way, that's like the politest analogy for the Republican Party you've ever made. No, that was good.
Well, I get it. Well,
you made the Republican Party sound like a fun
choices.
place to be.
You're the kid who just got thrown out of the party who really wants to be in the party.
Yeah.
You can either be nice, you can try to text, you can try to bribe, you can do whatever, or you can call the police and say, if I can't be in there, everybody's getting busted. Trump's calling the police. If he's not in the party, nobody's partying.
Interesting. I guess it depends where you live and if there's another party.
I think the bigger question is on the other side. Well, these are the other dynamics because we just talked about it. They asked Trump to go.
Build off of your analogy?
Oh, go ahead.
Because I would say to you, Trump's the type of person I would say, I'm throwing my own party. But the problem is that I think he already tried. Like I think with the social media platform, I think with everything else, like he essentially tested the water to see like, is there a way to do this without the Republican Party? And I think it became very clear, like, no, like I need the Republican
But don't you think, back to my high school kid analogy, if he was going to throw a party, the best way for his party to be the coolest is if everyone got arrested at the other party. Now they have no other party to go to?
No, because you need those people.
But the people told him that they don't want you.
I understand that, but that doesn't mean that he's going to give up. Like Trump doesn't give up. Like that's not a Trump thing.
But Trump doesn't play nice to people who tell him they don't want him around. Trump doesn't play nice.
I still think we are having different arguments.
I don't.
I know you, but I'm telling like.
So here's my question.
You're saying what would Trump want to do, and I am saying yes.
He does whatever he wants to do.
I disagree with that.
Name the last thing you think Trump did that he didn't want to do.
That he didn't want to do. I honestly don't think he wanted to leave the White House.
Well, he almost didn't.
Okay, but he did.
Well, okay.
Okay.
Well, nobody that loses an election wants to leave, but he almost did.
I'm just saying.
All right.
You asked the question.
All right. If that's the best answer, you got whatever. I think that the more interesting side is on the DeSantis side because he is a guy whose star is on the rise, and it has. I would assume it hasn't peaked yet. And as we talked about yesterday, do they think he can bide his time and wait 4 more years, which is 6 years total or whatever, especially when there's lots of people. Ivanka came out and said, I'm not supporting it.
Right.
I'm done with politics. I'm not supporting my dad's run. So there are lots of people in the Republican Party. And if you're in the Republican Party and you don't like Trump anymore and you're blaming the midterms on Trump, you are begging DeSantis to run.
Okay.
So that's where the split comes. I think it's really hard for either of these guys to back out. Okay. And that's why I think they're going to fight for a long time. Would it be better if one of them? Yes. I don't see which one's backing out.
I think the Republican Party is going to have to tell one of them to stand down, and they're going to say, yell, kick, scream, cry, but you're doing it over there. That's the point I'm making to you. Like, I think.
No, I get it. And
because you know what Republicans hate more than Democrats?
Oh, no, I don't know. I do not.
Do you know what they hate more than Democrats?
What?
Losing. And I think the Republican Party saw the midterms as losing. And so I think for them, this is like, I'm not saying this is like the end all, but like for them, this is a big deal. Like for the Republican Party, to have the midterms
underachieved, and they,
okay.
Yes.
So what I'm saying, like, do I think that there are going to be people willing to maybe say or do some things that 6 weeks ago they weren't? Yeah, I do. And I think it's going to end up being telling one of those two, like, you are outside, like you're welcome here, but if you're going to be noisy, like you're doing it from the outside.
I get it. And from a historical standpoint, we're even not that old enough to see. When Jimmy Carter lost in 1980, there was no discussion about that Jimmy Carter had any pull.
Sure.
He went from being a former president to an ambassador. When H.W. lost to Clinton, when they ran up again, it wasn't like, hey, maybe we should throw Bush up there again. The one was a Grover Cleveland Alexander who won and lost and won again. But like Trump is such a unique figure in American history that he is still the leader on every poll of if you had to nominate somebody today from the GOP, it's still Trump, even after he lost. And we've never seen this.
Sure.
And that's what it is a fascinating
No, I get it. I think I'll end with this. I think the Trump thing, because we've had a lot of conversations about him, and I think we do a decent job talking about him, like where we're not destructive, like we're talking about him at face value and just kind of looking at it from the outside. I think one of the things that is challenging to understand about Donald Trump is that I'm not implying he's a rocket scientist. I understand that people don't think he's smart. I think one of the things that Donald Trump's very good at is understanding that like having something is worth more than not having it at all. And so when he's in the White House, people are like, he's going to do this, he's going to do that, it's going to fall apart, everything else. But like Donald Trump also understands that to be president of the United States, it can't fall apart. Like the White House has to stand, and like there has to be a country. And like so this weird thing of like he's going to rip the Republican Party apart. He's going to rip the country apart, all those things. I understand the sentiment. Like, I understand why people feel that when they listen to him. But the part of it is like Donald Trump is shrewd. And so the idea that he's going to tear something apart that he needs or wants, it doesn't make sense. So do I think he's going to tear the Republican Party down? I don't. Like, do I think like he would just absolutely make the White House fall apart? I don't because he wants those things.
But don't you think that half the country to play devil's advocate thinks on January 6th he was willing to tear the whole democracy apart?
Well, no, because at that point it was no longer his democracy. That's the point I'm making. Well,
it wasn't his. He wasn't the president. But it's still as an American, it's still his democracy.
Think about what you're saying. On January 6th, in that moment, he's like in his mind, find the votes, right? Like he's calling people up and saying find votes because he knows like he's about to lose it, right? So by January 6th, it's no longer his. Like, and he knows
the institutions of America and the democracy. There's a half the country that thinks on January 6th, Trump said, "I am more important than America."
There's also half the
country.
So
you don't think now he would say, "I'm more important than the Republican Party"?
There's also half the country on January 6th that they truly believe it was a bunch of people like defending what they believed was right.
Correct.
So
well, that's the thing.
I'm not trying to have a conversation of what people think. I'm talking about Donald Trump, and Donald Trump is more shrewd than people and when I say shrewd, like. There's an intelligence because you wouldn't say shrewd if the person was dumb. Like if someone's dumb, they're oblivious. It's hard to be shrewd when you're dumb. Do you understand what I'm saying?
No, I get that.
So in order to be shrewd, there has to be this sense of understanding what are the things you have, what are the things you want, and how do I get those things or keep those things without burning them to the ground. As far as January 6th goes, I truly believe at that point, it was no longer his. He knew that. He was calling, asking for votes. It's no longer his. At that point, it's like, it's all up in the air. Well, right now, in this moment, he needs the Republican Party, and he knows that.
Correct.
Okay. So do I think he'll burn it down? I don't. I think he knows he needs it.
Because they haven't thrown him out yet.
Okay.
And I'm not saying they're going to. But if they ever get to the point where they say, we don't really want you anymore, then I think it will. Here are my 2 points that I was going to make about Trump. One of them is his part of what made him who he is politically was his obstinance to the political machine and the ability to give everyone the finger and say, I'm going to do what I want to do. And it's that endearing quality that so much of America who was sick of politics embraced. So it doesn't play his hardcore base loves the defiance of what Trump brings, and it's hard to he would make a lot of people mad if he was just like, okay, we're going to work this, because that's not what he does. He tells the establishment you're wrong, and that's kind of what got him to where he is. The other thing is just from and this goes to lots of politicians. He just not even politicians, famous people. He just kind of embodies it more. You can tell he hasn't been told no very much, and he does whatever he wants, and he's run whatever he wants, just like with all the other, he didn't release his taxes, and all the other presidents did. He didn't pull out of these companies that you're not supposed to run companies my kid's going to run it. Okay, like there's lots of things that all the other former presidents did that he never did because he just didn't want to. I'm not going to do it. You can't tell me what to do. And now I just think in the same aspect, if the Republican Party, it's not happening soon. If in 2023, I don't know, If 12 months from now, the Republican Party sits down with him and says, we're going to go with DeSantis, he is not, there is going to be no, I don't think he's going to think of a long-term plan. Let me see. For the long term, for the next run, do I need to get back in? I don't think he works that way. And maybe I'm wrong, but I've seen no evidence that he works that way. And I don't think his people want him to work. I think his base loves the fact that someone walks in, tells him you're fired. Just like, because so much of America, if their boss walked into an office and says you're fired, they would start screaming obscenities at him. And that's human nature.
We just disagree. Well, not so much on him, but more so just like how this will play out within the Republican Party over the next 2 years.
I have no idea how to play it.
Okay.
That's why I'm fascinated. And I don't even have, like, even regardless of what side you're on, in anything, you look at a team like, I would be this quarterback. I would do this. I would punt. I would go for it. I would trade my draft pick. We have all these strategies I have no idea what I would suggest to the Republican Party. Unless something drastically changes, it's one of these two. I'm not sure who your best answer is. From all the aspects of it, from who's got a base, who's got a support, who's turning on Trump, who's building up DeSantis. But with all this time, Trump's still the leader. And it is a crazy, crazy time in American history.
Trump has a campaign management team, messaging team, marketing team, media team, and super PAC flush with cash. Currently, no other Republican is anywhere close to getting that organized. It's a very fair point.
It is. And he still leads in all. And it's not DeSantis did. I read a thing that after the midterms, in one of the polls, Trump dropped 1 point. He went from like 47% to 46%. So it really, this national, at least to the public, didn't hurt him. If you liked him before, you like him after.
Sure.
DeSantis went up, but there's still a gap. I think DeSantis is in the 30s.
Yeah, but haven't we? I mean, talking about polls is fun. Like for you,
it is fun
for you and I,
especially for numbers people. I agree.
It makes you and our lives better that there are polls. However, I mean, who is more likely to pick up the phone, like an extremist or a non-extremist, right? Like, so, like, So listen, I am not downplaying. I was walking around telling people like the Oz Fetterman thing's closer than people realize, right? Like I was sitting here months ago saying like I think Oz is going to win, right? And obviously he didn't. But
I thought Oz was going to win on election day.
But that thing got close, and it's the same thing with Trump. Like I would never downplay Trump's capability to get people to the poll and to vote for him. Polling is weird because people who like Trump don't like Trump. They love Trump. And so when you're doing polling,
like no politician we've ever seen.
Correct. And
it's even weird to call him a politician.
Correct.
Because he's such a figure. But yes, he has had a more rabid base than anyone we can relate to.
So in polling, that is a very hard thing to manage because people who want Trump to be president are going to be very willing to express that and say that to anybody that is willing to listen.
I agree with that.
So polling is going to be a challenge. It's going to be very, very difficult. It's almost the inverse effect of before. Like last time Trump ran, it was, or in 2016 when Trump ran, it was no one really, there were a lot of Republicans who kind of wanted him, but they didn't want to necessarily announce it out loud.
Agreed.
This is almost going to be the opposite because you're going to have a faction of people that are just now they feel he's already been the president once. It's been justified. Like they're going to be very willing to say, I'm voting for Donald Trump.
Well, and the other thing is when we look at the midterms where the Democrats did way better than anyone expected, the blame, the number one blame thing around is, oh, look, the Trump people didn't do well. How much of it was Roe versus Wade? Because when you're looking at these elections where it's 51 to 49, where it's 52, they're counting at the end. If maybe Trump is getting beat up for something, that maybe they didn't vote against Trump, maybe they vote against the Supreme Court.
Maybe it depends which one, right? Like if you look at governors, I think it's very clear independents and centered Republicans said we're not voting for election deniers. That's when because just the governor, I mean, it was a 7-for-7 sweep for election deniers. Senate and House, because it's more kind of closer to home, in state, that kind of stuff, especially like state Senate and state House. I think, yes, like the Roe v. Wade certainly had an effect. And so governor-wise, I don't think it was a vote against Trump. I think it was centered people kind of being like if you're an election denier, it's not happening.
Here's a
like
thought.
We're not letting it.
And I know nobody's listening anymore because we've talked for 50 minutes. Is there any chance? First of all, Mike Pence was on with David Muir, did not do well in his interview.
Yes.
Is there any chance they say, DeSantis, you're the running mate. He's only got one term left. Trump's the president. You're the vice president.
Saying this to DeSantis?
Yes. In 2028, it's yours. Because Trump can only run one more time. Any chance that they
the question
combine them under you remember that?
The question is DeSantis, because I think if you're DeSantis, does it benefit you to have that wagon in 2028?
That's the question.
I would argue right now, no. It really comes down to like if you're DeSantis, are you desperate or not? If you're desperate, maybe you attach to the wagon, and in 2028 you feel like you're now, on this unstoppable trajectory. Maybe if you're DeSantis, I don't think DeSantis feels desperate, and so I think for that
not
reason,
right now he doesn't.
No, and I think for that reason, I think that idea, I could see people within the party kind of being like, hey, like nudging, like. But I think if you're DeSantis, it's an absurd idea right now, not because it's a bad idea, but it's because you internally are like, what is the desperation for? Like what is the concept that I need to hitch my, like, that makes no sense. That would be my opinion.
From the party side, it makes a lot of sense.
From the party side, it would be arguably a very, like, I'm trying to think who the Democrats.
It's their best ticket right now.
I would try to think who the Democrats could even run. That would be like, I think it would be a wasted year for the Democrats personally. I mean, you would because essentially you would have the Trump wagon with DeSantis kind of bringing along independents and more centered Republicans. I mean, it makes a ton of sense.
Is DeSantis that centered? I don't think.
What's that?
I don't think DeSantis is centered.
But no, but that's. I think we mentioned this on it was either Monday or Tuesday. I said it's so far wide right now that it is crazy that DeSantis moves us closer to the center. Like that's, you know what I'm saying? Like that's where, so it's not like coming out and saying like, I'm not here saying DeSantis is like this moderate Republican. And he's like, but what I'm saying is like, I think a lot of times in politics, it's can you meet in the middle? Can you get closer to the middle? And in a weird way, in the Republican Party, DeSantis is a move towards the middle.
Maybe.
And so I do think it would bring some independence and some moderate Republicans.
I would not be shocked if that's what they come up with. Because I don't see a peaceful divorce. I
don't see, again, I understand people nudging it. You would have to convince me why DeSantis would feel like he is not enough. You would have to convince DeSantis that him running on a ticket without Trump wouldn't beat Biden. And I don't know if you can convince, like, first of all, not only do I think it'd be hard to convince him, I think it would be hard to look him and say that he can't win.
No, I get that. If DeSantis thinks he can win on his own, then obviously, if there's any fear that after,
do you think DeSantis feels that way? Because I don't.
But Trump hasn't gone after him yet, and he will.
He kind of has. He's made comments
for a year.
There was some headlines.
He's going to go after him for a year.
I get that, but like, what does that? I don't know. What does that entail?
It entails that after it's all said and done, even if DeSantis does get the nomination, that does he? Because that's one of the things.
Voters are going to vote for DeSantis if he gets the bid.
Not all of them. There's a percentage that won't. Just like the McCormick voters didn't vote for Oz.
Okay.
If Oz would have got all the McCormick voters, I bet he would have won, but he didn't. Because after if you're a McCormick supporter and you say all this stuff about Oz, he's a carpetbagger, he's a crudité, he's all these things, and then he wins, you don't like him.
Well, real quick, Oz didn't lose because of McCormick voters. Oz lost because Roe v. Wade happened 4 or 5 months before the midterms.
Correct.
Okay. I'm just clarifying that.
But obviously, there's always people in a high, because wasn't statewide. Didn't Oz win by like 900 and some? It was less than 1,000 votes and he beat McCormick. There have to be people that loved McCormick. And if you loved McCormick, you didn't love McCormick and think Oz was cool. You loved McCormick and you hated Oz for all the things that McCormick was that Oz wasn't, like a Pennsylvanian, like.
No,
and
I get that. I'm trying to think.
It's not about the Republicans would go vote Democrat. It's would the DeSantis supporters stay away from the polls and vice versa.
No, but just like on that stage, I don't think that's true, because again, it comes back to the idea of like I think people who support Trump very much dislike the Democrats. That's the politest way that I can put it. And so the idea that if DeSantis ended up on the ticket and Trump supporters would just be like, nope, forget that guy. That's not what they're going to say. They're going to say, let's go, Brandon. Like, we're not doing this for another 4 years. And so I just don't know if it has the impact that you are. I don't want to say you're implying, but I don't know if I agree that it would have enough of an impact to whether or not Biden.
Whether it would change anything?
Yes.
Maybe. But there are. It's just like as a sports fan, if you're on this team and the guy's on the other team and you hate him because he's on your rival, if a Baltimore Raven showed up and played for the Steelers tomorrow, there are people that are like, I have trouble rooting for him because I've rooted against him for so long. And that's sports. That doesn't mean anything.
I thought about it now, like now that we're kind of a week and a half removed from the midterms and kind of all of it and getting a chance to just kind of digest it all. I do wonder if, I said to you, I think Biden deserves some credit for the midterms because he figured out a way to make people forget about some of the pitfalls of the first year and a half. However, like in reflecting now, I don't know if a lot of Republicans, especially moderate ones and independents, went to the polls and viewed their vote as a vote against Biden. I think 2022 was representative of how little people were thinking about the presidency when they went to the poll. I think they were thinking about abortion rights. I think they were thinking about election denial. I think they were thinking, like in some states, it was about legalizing marijuana. Like, I think the presidency was very far from on the midterms.
I agree with that.
So going into 2024, I think what might shock Democrats is how much that shifts for independent voters.
No, it's very well said. I never thought of it that way, but yes.
Now all of a sudden in 2024, yes, those things still matter, but now like I'm really voting on the president and whether or not I want Joe Biden to be the president again. And sometimes, like, I think my main point is sometimes it's not about whether someone wants to vote for DeSantis or Trump. It's just tell me which one so I can vote against the other party. And I think in 2024, that's something the Democrats are really going to have to like figure out.
No, that is very well said.
Regardless of if DeSantis.
You didn't think of that on your own. You must have read that.
No, I did. I've had a week to think of it. But thank you for that. And I did that while I was sick too. Imagine if I was
You're not sick. You're not sick at all. Today, you're not sick at all.
If I was healthy and felt
today, you are not sick at all.
You don't think so?
No, you were. I'm telling you, Richard Simmons.
I feel pretty good.
I could not remember. We're in the middle of the Richard Simmons talk, and I'm thinking to myself, how did we get on Richard Simmons? But I said you were running around doing jumping jacks like Richard. There we go. Thank you.
This was the first day. I think what's making it's the first day I ate in like 2 days. I haven't ate a lot.
You ate like.
I did. I ate 72 hours worth of food.
There are jungle cats who didn't eat as much for lunch today as you just did.
It had been about 72 hours since I like really ate something. So I was
well, you might not have to. You're like the anaconda that they eat somebody and they don't have to eat for a week. I think you're good. I think you're good for a while.
Anything else before we go?
No, that's it. That's all I got.
That's all you got? That was good. I enjoyed that. I'll say it again. You're one of the only people I could do this with. It's nice to have these conversations and be able to I could go do it with somebody else, but they'd probably be on my side. It would just be us.
Well, I'm not on your side. I tell you, I was thinking about like where people said they're surprised we don't get mad, and I don't know. I don't get mad at people very much. Like how often do you really get mad at your friends?
Well, let me say that.
Wait, we might be onto a topic here.
It's not about getting mad at my friends. I think I've told you this before. My favorite conversations with people, my number one thing is like, do I think they care about the thing they're talking about? And so like, if I think they're trying to listen and they're considering and they're really like, I'll talk to anybody. I don't care if you completely disagree with me. If I think you're like really like caring and interesting and like you really are listening, then I'm down. And so I think
so when Bogue isn't listening, you just slap him upside the head, and that's what makes you mad. Yeah.
No, Bogue's great to have conversation with. I like having a conversation with
just checking.
And a lot of my friends are that way too. I think it's hard to find people in your life in general where you're just able to kind of put yourself in their shoes while they're speaking. You don't have to agree with them, but just to give them the levity, give them the air, be willing to say, where's the line in the middle? Like, it's hard to find those people. And so there's very few people I would have done today's conversation with, and you're one of them. So, I don't know. Congratulations.
Well, thank you. I don't think I've ever, like, there have been times like, he is just crazy. He's so wrong. Why won't he see? But I don't think I've ever been mad.
No.
I don't.
Maybe not.
But I don't think guys, like.
Oh, yes, they do.
They get mad at their friends?
You don't think so?
I can't.
Yeah, I think so.
I mean, on occasion.
But you have this defense mechanism, and I think I've told you this before. Your ability to use humor as a defense mechanism is like, I've never met somebody as skillful with it as you.
Too bad it wasn't marketable.
You will deflate tension the moment you feel awkward, uncomfortable, dismissed, like whatever it is. You have this unique ability to deflate it, trying to use some sort of humor, and it can be a gift and a curse, but it is impressive.
I like how you use trying to use humor, implying that sometimes it's not humorous.
Well, listen, Chris Rock doesn't bat 1,000.
He's close.
Is he?
Except the G.I. Jane joke. That one didn't hit.
That's what I'm saying.
What did hit?
I see what you did.
See, I didn't even try to do that. Yeah. See what I did there?
No, so no one bats 1,000, but no, it's I appreciate it. Really, really matters to me. Thank you guys for watching the Midday Show. Be sure to go to NorthcentralPa.com for all of your local news. Thank you to Weis Markets for being the title sponsor of the Midday Show.
Tomorrow, Jeff will be here with an IV running to make himself look even sicker.
No, I think I'm gonna
a cold compress on your head.
No, I think I'm turning the corner tonight. I think when I wake up tomorrow, I'll be.
You sound good today.
I'll be.
I mean, you sound way better.
No, I'm gonna turn the corner tomorrow morning. I'm putting that thought out into the universe, and the universe.
You hitting the gym? You can do some road work, maybe. I sweat it out.
I'll tell you what. Last night, snow coming down, plow going around the loop. The dog and I were doing laps because kind of like just to kind of sweat it out, try to get moving a little bit. So yeah, so that helped a little bit. Probably do it again tonight, just to try to, like you said.
Your dog was in heaven last night, right?
It's so my dog. I'll tell the story, and then we really do have to go. My dog he's not food incentivized, which for anybody who has a dog, it's a nightmare if your dog is not food incentivized. Because like when you're a puppy and you're trying to train them, the whole concept is they want the thing in your hand. Okay, so growing up through was not food incentivized at all. I can put dog food into the bowl and he will let it sit there for 48, 72 hours. And then once he realizes there's no treats coming, there's no pizza crust left over, then you'll hear it like 1 a.m, you'll hear like crunch, 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 like in the dark, and he's over at the food bowl. I got out, before we went for a walk, I made my girlfriend a bowl of macaroni and cheese. And so, of course, he's sitting there by my girlfriend waiting to see if he's going to get the remnants of the bowl.
Right.
So in the meantime, I want to take him for the walk. So I have to like walk over. Usually he's like stoked, right? I have to walk over. I hook him up. He's kind of like, you can see him kind of like looking back, trying to decide, but he finally gives in. We run out of the house. I kid you not. He didn't sniff one bush. His only objective was to get around the loop. I didn't even get into the driveway. I unhook him. He's running up to the door. Before I even open the door and get it closed again, he is already sitting next to my girlfriend looking up at her.
You said he's not food incentivized.
What's that?
You said he's not.
He's not dog food incentivized. Because he knows the dog food is going to be there. So like
he knows it's awful.
Excuse me. So the dog food for him is like a buffer. It's like a safety. So like when I tell you my dog is a crazy person, we literally did this loop. And I swear to God, the only thing on my dog's mind, he didn't go.
I got to get back home. I got to get back home.
He didn't sniff a tree. He didn't go to the bathroom. Nothing. I mean, his only objective was the sooner we get back to the house, the more likely I am to get the mac and cheese.
I thought because he's a husky that he would love the snow and he would go run around.
He usually does, but last night he could have.
Well, it's also early in the season. He's not ready for snow yet mentally.
Maybe.
He's like, we haven't even had Thanksgiving yet.
Maybe.
Like I haven't done my Black Friday shopping. I'm not.
he is, now that I have new neighbors, at some point I will go around and tell them, like, if you see my dog outside laying in the snow, and then you come back 3 hours later and he's in the same spot laying in the snow, he's fine. Because I know there are people that if they see this dog
They
outside,
think it's abuse.
it's abuse or that's not. This dog will lay in the snow.
He's a husky.
Yes,
That's what they do.
He will lay there in the snow the entire day. It doesn't matter. It doesn't bother him. Nothing else. So at some point, I am going to make the round with my name. It's a little, I mean, obviously first snow yesterday, a little early. So I didn't get a chance to really go around and tell people, but I will actually give them kind of the warning. Like, if you see him, he's fine. Like, this is not a big deal.
You have a good dog.
So,
I'm a dog person more, so I like most dogs, but you have a good dog.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'm Jeff Everett. He's Mark Messina. We will see